Q&A, I'd love to welcome Stu back up to the stage. Can you just talk about exactly why it was so important for you to make this film?
The first time I saw, some of these images, I felt a pride that I had never felt before because I saw them happy for the first time in my life. Now, at my age, that's great, but if we could have younger people starting out seeing these images, I think it would be even more powerful, so that's why I made it.
Great.
What happened, Bill was the focus of this at the beginning and at the end. What happened to all of his material?
We are making a movie about it next. He's our next project. Because it was a little tangential to include this in the film, but he is actually the first single man in America to adopt a child through a county adoption agency. He was on the Mike Douglas show, and he was on on the Donahue show and all this other stuff. So, and incidentally, he did it while running a gay bathhouse. So I think there's a nice little film in there. So I've got the stuff. The box is not, but I think the point is made that he's my landlord. So you just scratch the surface right now, and there is LGBTQ history waiting to be saved that will be lost in the next 5 to 10 years, and it's incumbent upon all of us in this room. So actually, we're also looking for more material for this film. We call it a crowd work in progress, where if you have material, especially from underrepresented groups of people that you didn't see as much of, that you let me know about it, that we try to save it locally with archives, but we also layer it into future updates to this film, because it's so important for all of us to be able to see each other, not just the middle-class white men with the cameras from the 1940s, So.
It seems like there's little pockets of people doing this all over, a little bit in Washington, a little bit in San Francisco, but it's like your film, is this the first effort to bring everyone together to do that?
It's the first time that it's been solely about home movies and things that people have kept of themselves in their closet. My definition was rather broad, but I think otherwise we wouldn't have been able to put in the Edge Lake Resort video at the end, which was primarily important. No, but to answer your question, there are murmurings of a national historical movement, and if anybody knows about more, please speak up. But this is really happening locally around the country and regionally, and I think it should stay local. It's as much New York history as it is LGBT history.
I love the lesbian bar footage in the beginning. That seemed very singular to me. And I was just wondering, are there any other kinds of events or scenarios like that you get the sense that the historians are really looking for, things that we don't have yet, or things that would be so great to discover?
The everyday life, like not the parade footage, which is very important, just like he said, but it's the stuff of people just cooking Thanksgiving dinner, a group of men or a group of women doing that, or just taking kids to school. The stuff where we see ourselves doing the normal everyday activities, I think is what we're looking for, what archivists are looking for as much as anything.
Well, was there any issues finding sources or reaching out to people from the film and TV footage at the personal archives?
We have a license to show this film festival-wise. If we were to rebroadcast it, that's going to be another Kickstarter campaign. I'll tell you that right now. And it's interesting, there is a little bit of a legal, our attorney's interpretation is that it was going to get thrown out anyway, so it's not theirs anymore. I'm not sure their attorneys would agree with that. And so that's kind of where an area we need to button up when we go forward with this film. But I mean, I think the worst case scenario would be having to take out the guys kissing in the background of that live shot. So,
I was just curious about the skinny dipping video, and if that led to more insights into the movie industry, because it seemed like it was like an LA connected film. Did that reveal like more people who, I know there was a whole gay scene in the movie business. That might be how that was developed. I was just curious.
Yeah, so San Fernando at that time was really rural, but now it's basically almost a suburb of Los Angeles. I kind of made a conscious decision in this film to show everyday folks, because there is the Rock Hudson pool party stuff and all that, and that's wonderful. But I think it's important for everyday folks to see themselves. And I will tell you an interesting thing about that footage is how did they get that developed, right? What I've learned from people from that time was that, well, first of all, in case you didn't know the procedure, you would send off this film for developing, usually in Rochester, New York, or someplace. You wouldn't send it to the drugstore. It would have to go through the U.S. mail. And there would be inspectors there at the other end who would check for decency of the film and moral standards. And that was something that I'm sure they had codes for, but I'm sure was also subjective. But LGBT people knew that the inspectors didn't have time to look at the whole reel all the way through. So they would do heteronormative, straight stuff at the beginning and the end of their reel. And all the stuff that you probably see in the skinny dipping was probably in the middle when they were off, like, in another room, you know, as it was being processed.
Appreciated that you kind of poked at issues of class and race in terms of who's documenting and why they're able to, and then who's reflected in the history. And it was just so moving to see that young South Asian teen at the end that, you know, in some ways he's colorblind, that this is his history, but there was very powerful moments that touched on that, because it's something that I don't feel like is always addressed in queer film Hollywood or documentary, like the Stonewall movie that literally whitewashed like the kids who did throw the first rock. So I'm just interested, you know, that decision by you to include that when you had all this footage of mostly white people.
It's a really, I'm so glad you asked this question, because it's kind of the, it's like the cross to bear on this project. You know, I don't know what other producers do, but I, as a producer, know that the way to make a film that people relate to is for them to see themselves. All of us need to see ourselves. What happened was I was starting to edit in all these different shots in this film to the point where it was becoming unauthentic. I mean, there was just, it was all white men. And I was trying to find, oh wait, there's an Asian woman who's like in her mid-40s, let's put her in. And I was doing that so much and cherry picking that I realized that this isn't the story. I'm not being true to the story, I need to address it. And then go out and try to find it. So that, you know, that's what's going on there.
How did you, I can only imagine that you structured and restructured and were constantly reorganizing the thing based on the sequence in which things actually came to you, that it must have been kind of a constantly moving target.
I want schools to use this film, and it's kind of more, I suppose we'll take out the orgy lines and things like that. We'll probably have to clean it up. But I want students to be able to see this film in schools, and so I wanted there to be history lessons and a chronology to it, and that's kind of what we hung things on. I also think there's a few too many characters in here. I think that we need to kind of maybe focus more on the man and the woman interviewing the man a little bit, maybe flesh that out a little bit, and just have more space for more movies.
In talking to people who are into gay history, I think there's a lot of frustration that in academia and on college campuses, there's a lot of queer theory programs, and they're usually subsumed within women and gender studies departments, and there's almost no emphasis in academia on LGBT history. What's your sense of that in terms of what you've experienced in traveling with the film?
I applaud queer studies and everything, but I think we have the chance that we may make the mistake of reinventing the wheel if we don't get some of this great stuff that has been handed to us, and then get ready to pass it on.
Well,
Does that answer your question?
What are the needs of like these institutions financially in terms of doing this preservation? I mean, are these?
They're on a shoestring, a lot of them. And in fact, that's why you see a lot of these home movies in those bankers' boxes. God bless the GLBT Historical Society, but they don't have the money to like store those films in the way they should be stored. They're with the papers. And I think there was an archivist last week who said, you know, the papers are easy. Like, we can do those, we can process those. It's these films that we don't have how am I going to play that? So they just get put in a box. We were the first to look at those and get them transferred. So.
Stu, thank you so much for making this film. And